Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Killer Shrew Fans 12 Days of Reviews. And today we're having ourselves a bullfight. That's right, today some Carnotaurus models are gonna go head to head. In quarter one, we have the recently reviewed Nanmu Carnotaurus Ranger 2.0, the standard version. Released in 2022 and measuring in at 14.5 inches long and 5 inches tall, this figure sees Nanmu continuing in their trend of releasing bigger, better, badder versions of their old work. But will it be enough to overcome the challenger? Enter Prime 1's 1/38 scale Carnotaurus. Another 2022 release, this officially licensed figure measures in at around 13 inches long and just over 5 inches off the ground, and comes presented on a piece of Jurassic history, a base shaped like Isla Nublar. But which of these meat-eating bulls deserves to be in charge? Will Nanmu's Ranger 2.0 be seeing red, or will Prime 1 be giving Nanmu the horns? Find out in today's episode of Head to Head. Round 1, the price. Coming right out of the gate with a distinct advantage in this category, the unofficial Nanmu product runs upwards of $74.99 before shipping and taxes. At that price, you get a larger resin figure and minimalistic base with the usual levels of Nanmu detail and paint. Meanwhile, the collecting clout that comes with an officially licensed product is going to cost you an additional $35, with the Prime 1 offering costing upwards of $109.99 before shipping and taxes. That gets you a polystone figure and large base in the shape of the famous island from the Jurassic saga, emblazoned with the official Fallen Kingdom logo. Although this base would make for a handsome and tempting addition to any figure, at $35 cheaper for a larger offering, the obvious bang for your buck winner of this round is Nanmu's Ranger. Winner, Nanmu. Round 2, the Sculpt. Both of these figures come finished with high levels of sculpted detail. As you can see, Nanmu brought their usual level of craftsmanship to this Carnotaurus here. Ranger features a mosaic of flat, non-overlapping scales that vary in shape and size across the face, neck, body, and tail. Beautiful tension lines of skin pull away from the gut with the rotation of the right leg, while the extended neck features areas of sagging folds and stretched skin. The back features the uneven row of spines present in the film design, and the head sports a mix of both flat and raised relief scales and spikes around and beneath the textured horns. When it comes to detail, Prime 1's offering is no slouch. As you can see, the main body of the figure is textured in randomly sized raised scales, and a plethora of skin folds in the neck, throat, and hanging around the gut and legs of the figure. The rows of uneven spikes are once again present, and the head sports similarly styled scales to Nanmu's across the mandible and around the fenestra. All of this makes for quite the rough-looking hide, capturing the feel of the film design in model form. That being said, whereas the texture on the body feels well handled, the face is weirdly smoothed over in comparison, especially next to the crisp scale work of the mandible. Whether this area of the sculpt was left simple in the design phase or smoothed over during casting, it does leave the detail work feeling unfinished and on perhaps the most important area of the sculpt. Little details like the materials of the teeth on Nanmu's versus the simple, flat, painted teeth of Prime 1's also give Nanmu the edge. With that in mind, Nanmu's more finished sculpt pulls ahead and takes this second round. Winner, Nanmu. Round 3, the paint. Both figures sport the warm tone seen on the Carnotaurus that first appears in Fallen Kingdom, with a predominantly rusty orange base coat that transitions to a lighter underbelly. Various shades of yellows, burnt siennas, and oranges are then mixed across the board, acting as highlights and lowlights to bring out the details of each sculpt. But then we come to what is perhaps Ranger's greatest strength and Prime 1's greatest weakness: the patterning. Whereas Ranger features interconnected stripes so thinly applied they look like washes across the various shades of the body, the markings on Prime 1's statue have all the finesse of a child's coloring book gone wrong. Thick squiggles applied with no rhyme or reason across the thighs and flank really cripple whatever appeal the base tones have to offer. You've heard me say before that a bad paint job can derail a promising sculpt, and I think this is perhaps the greatest example of such a letdown. Even features like the face feel sophomorically done, with fly specks of black meant to stand in as scale detail, making the even application of Nanmu's various shades of browns, oranges, and creams look like the Sistine Chapel in comparison. Small details like the color of the nails also go a long way, with a mix of browns and blacks on Nanmu's contrasting the jet black simplistic application on Prime 1's. We've come to expect more from the $40 figures of PNSO, let alone an officially licensed $100+ statue, and such a disappointing performance allows Nanmu to easily take the third round. Winner, Nanmu. Round 4, display. When it comes to the display of these figures, both have strengths and weaknesses. Prime 1's Carnotaurus is cast in polystone and comes with a very large base in the shape of Isla Sorna. The surface is a rough, earthy texture with various pebbles and sticks, and to cap it off, it has been stamped with an official Fallen Kingdom logo finished in a metallic paint. The underside is then finished with a black plastic that's been numbered and dotted with little foam bumpers to keep it elevated on the shelf and free from scuffs. The pose is pretty straightforward. Quite literally, the Carnotaurus is looking straight ahead, mouth held open, in a static, roaring position with the legs half bent beneath the body and tail curling back behind it. At around 1/38 scale, this figure has the added benefit of sizing up fairly well with the other Jurassic dinosaurs of your collection. Unfortunately, the figure is riddled with some of the worst seams I have ever seen on a model, let alone one with this price and pedigree. This costs it some serious appeal in the display department, and what is perhaps its nicest asset, that being the base, is a bit on the obnoxious side given its massive size and how much shelf real estate it takes up. And no, you can't not have this guy on the base, so you better be prepared to sacrifice some shelf space to accommodate it. Nanmu's figure comes on a much more manageable base, decked out in an uneven earthy finish and completed with sagging plant life. It also boasts a much less stiff walking pose with an appealing turn to the head and neck that gives it a lot of appeal from a front view. The figure is considerably larger than Prime 1's, and that may be fine to those of you who don't obsess over scale, but just know that if that is a key factor to you, then this Carno might be a bit too big to go with the rest of your collection. It should also be noted that the material on this figure seems to be more brittle than Prime 1's. The soles of the feet on mine began to crack almost right out of the box, and I have seen some truly distressing images circling the web of this figure, which Nanmu boasted as being constructed out of quote-unquote improved material, after the whole Brachiosaurus disaster. So just know that displaying this one needs to be done with a bit more care, and any fall, no matter how minor, will almost surely spell extinction for this fragile figure. With all of this in mind, it's kind of pick your poison when it comes to the display of these two. There are things to appreciate about both, but things that also really cripple them. Both take up more space than I think they need to, Nanmu given its larger size and Prime 1 because of that excessively sized base. And then there's the question of the seams in Prime 1's offering and the fragility of Nanmu's construction. All of that said, Nanmu's figure does offer the more pleasing, lifelike pose and smaller base, making it both nicer to look at and ever so slightly easier to display. Winner, Nanmu. Round 5, Screen Accuracy. Screen accuracy is perhaps the most important category for fans of the films. Obviously, we all want our Jurassic dinosaurs to look like their film counterparts. Otherwise, what's the point? We all know Nanmu's gonna deliver on that front, especially for being an unlicensed company. But I think this is actually the first time I've ever pit them against an officially licensed product to see who comes out on top. You know, in the case of an officially licensed piece, the artist behind it will have access to every source of reference they could need in order to receive that official stamp of approval. As such, the cards are uniquely stacked against Nanmu this time around. That being said, as far as emulating the Carnotaurus of the Jurassic saga goes, both of these models fare quite well. In fact, I'd say they do great. Both have the characteristically short, deep muzzle of the films, the incorrectly jointed elbows, and multiple rows of short, uneven spines running across the dorsal region. Both even feature the multi-layered palette we see in the mouth of the film design, although you will need the open-mouth Nanmu sculpt to appreciate this particular detail. The paint jobs also capture the broad strokes of the film design, weaknesses of Prime 1's application aside. It's actually very hard to find any fault in either of these figures' portrayal of the in-universe design. But after more time than I'd care to admit, carefully comparing dinosaur models to screen grabs on the internet, I think I finally spotted a slight deviation in one of them. Nanmu's new sculpt features a very slight curve in the maxilla, a feature that feels less defined in profile when looking at the film counterpart, and you can see this reflected in Prime 1's offering. Now that is so picky, it might as well be a joke, but I will admit that there's always been something that struck me as being a bit off in the profile of Nanmu's new Carnotaurus, and I think this might be it. It's little, and you wouldn't be out of bounds for saying inconsequential, but when the competition is this close, the successes of these figures are measured in inches, not miles. With that in mind, Prime 1 edges it out and takes the round. Winner, Prime 1. Of course, from certain angles, this particular feature on Nanmu's is largely hidden, and from that point of view, I'd say Nanmu even wins this round, but ultimately it's a moot point because Nanmu wins in literally every other category. Yeah, I hate to say it, but from the get-go, this one was obvious. Nanmu outperforms Prime 1 at every level on the artistic front, and does so for substantially less money. I wouldn't go so far as to say these unofficial pieces are flawless, but I don't think they can be beat for the price. Meanwhile, Prime 1's officially licensed piece runs for so much more, yet delivers so much less. I guess if the final product wound up just a little closer to the promo images, then this could be more of a fight, but I knew going into this that there was precious little competition to be had. Nanmu wins by a mile. That being said, I didn't want to just dismiss the Prime 1 piece out of hand because it does have some commendable features. The sculpt for the most part is strong and as screen accurate as you could want. Plus, the Isla Nublar shaped base is a nice touch, if a little overstated. The problem is all of those highlights have just been buried under poor construction and one of the worst paint jobs I have ever seen on a higher end figure. Let alone one that's supposed to be official. I don't know, if you're someone that cares a great deal about buying an officially licensed statue, then you might have differing opinions from mine. But if you're like me and you care more about the artistry than having a fancy logo, I think it's a no-brainer here. You guys can slug it out in the comments below about which one you think is better, but as for me, I'm fine with crowning Nanmu the winner of this particular bullfight.